The way I started out was I come from a very small town in a place called Mount Vernon, Ohio. I got into engineering because I had worked with a guy through high school that did electronics kind of things. I did find in the back of a Mechanics Illustrated an advertisement for a college in Indiana, which was about 4 hours away. Went to that school, got a degree in electrical engineering, got out, went to work near my home, and 6 weeks later the draft board asked me to come and have a physical. It was in 1965, right during when Vietnam was spinning up. I found a lieutenant sitting in an office and he said, "I don't know anything about engineering, but let's look through this catalog." So we finally came across a thing called the Civil Engineer Corps, which was a part of the Navy. Nobody in my family was in the military. I got in to get out. I was going to go back home and be like everybody else. I went to Vietnam eventually, and when I was there I decided to get out. So I submitted my resignation. You know, the Navy's very specific about having to do all this, so it had to be sent up through the chain of command. And then I suddenly began to think, maybe I have what I already want. I wanted a job where I could travel, where responsibility was plenty, and also that I'd be promoted based on my performance. So finally, I decided I wanted to stay in. So I told my boss. Next thing I know, I'm summoned to the Admiral's office. He looked up barely and said, "All right, Nash, what do you want?" I said, "Well, sir, I think I've made a mistake. I think I want to stay." He said, "Are you sure this is what you want?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, get out of here." So I did an about face and marched out of the room, thinking that things didn't go very well. Turned out later on, I found out that he had stayed up that night. He called the detailer, who are the people that move us around, and he told him to go get my resignation just before the Secretary of the Navy was ready to sign it. Once he had signed it, I'd have been out and not been able to get back in. So they sent me all the paperwork that I'd sent in and all what had been said on the way up. And for the rest of my career, I kept it in a folder on my desk, so every time I got to thinking, maybe I don't think I want to do this anymore, I'd open that up and I'd be happy. First part of my career, I was basically doing civilian construction kinds of things outside the United States, whether it was Vietnam, Spain, Germany. And then I went to graduate school, Naval Postgraduate School, and got a master's in finance. And then I went off to the CBs, the construction battalions. It was an interesting experience to me, and it made me believe that I might be able to survive. I'd often thought from the time I got into the Navy, if I made lieutenant commander, that would be great, because I didn't think I'd ever get much farther. So I began to enjoy the opportunity to be a leader, and eventually got to be a commanding officer of a battalion. I came to the conclusion then that my job was not to be the smartest person in the room. My job was to provide the environment where people thrive. In terms of becoming NAVFAC, I never thought I'd become a flag officer, an admiral. I mean, I just tried to do my best. That's what my mother told me to do. NAVFAC was part of the peace dividend, and basically what we were told is that we were going to be downsized. In fact, one group in the Pentagon wanted to do away with us altogether. So one day I woke up and found out that I was responsible for 175,000 acres and 100 naval bases to get rid of. We had an island up in Alaska called Adak, Alaska. We became part of a huge land swap with the Eskimos, the Aleuts. The local people had several misconceptions. They saw all of this facilities and infrastructure and they couldn't wait to get their hands on it, but then once they got their hands on it, they began to understand there's a lot of cost to doing that. There's maintenance and there's security and all that. And it was just the most amazing thing in terms of trying to negotiate that I've ever been through. I began to communicate with everybody in the command. There were about 25,000 at that time. I said, we're going to try to do this without firing anybody. We're going to find you jobs, we're going to have early outs. But before that, we're going to decide what we're going to look like in the future. And what we want to do is start off by contacting all of the people that we work for, customers, and ask them what we do that's of value. Once we figure out what we do of value, then let's figure out what are the processes it takes to do those kind of things. And then finally, we'll figure out how to organize. When we got to the end, we didn't fire anybody. We reduced the size of the organization by about 40%. and the organization thrived to this day. As we were going through this peace dividend and the restructuring of NAVFAC, it struck me one sleepless night that there are other companies or other entities in the world that have the same kinds of problems, aging facilities, and they're trying to make decisions about where to go in the future. The one that we really developed a relationship with was General Motors. General Motors spent about the same amount in facilities that we were spending at the time, about $8 billion. They had aging facilities and difficult times in the car world. They were going through organizational stress. So we bonded with General Motors. In fact, we signed an agreement with them that we would share. And everybody thought that we would learn everything from them. Turns out they learned a lot from us. So it turned out for us to be a very good relationship, and they still have that, 10 years or 12 or 15 years later, that relationship still exists. As all these other things were going on, I began to look around to see what was going on in our industry as I was the commander of NAVFAC. And I saw this new idea of design build. It wasn't new, but it was new to me. Basically, the same entity designs it and builds it. What we did is we went out and we trained our designers who really didn't like it because they lost some control, they thought, or took more risk. We also were very interested in, or I was very interested in, sustainability. We decided we were going to take $100 million worth of projects and try them as design build, sustainable design. And there were great arguments against it. It costs more, it takes more time. So we hired an independent agency to go look and see if it cost more and took more time. Well, their results were, I think, very clear. It was less time and it was more economical. And now I'd say probably 80% of the work that they do is design build. The first time I was associated with SAME was when I was stationed in Mississippi. It was probably in the late 70s. It was interesting to me that in that room I found contractors, I found military people, I found civil servants, that all talking, and that was kind of very strange, because normally they were on different sides of an issue. And then later on, as I worked through my career, I kind of drifted away because I was out of the country a lot and there was no post near. I was in Spain and Germany and other places away from SAME. So then I got back into it when I was out in Hawaii. I was a regional director. It dawned on me that this was the proper forum for people who are interested in the defense of the United States, for them to collaborate. I became SAME president in the midst of them trying to do away with NAVFAC. What I saw was at the annual conventions or annual meetings, we were losing attendance. We were also losing membership. The organization needed to change, not give up its principles or its mission or its goals or anything else, but it needed to move in a different direction. We changed it to an educational conference. So that would allow the federal employees to come because they're allowed to go to things that are educational, and it would continue to enable us to do this networking that was so important, I thought, to the defense of the United States. And it took off. And so since then, they've been doing these educational meetings, and I think it's really helped a lot. The first thing I would say is that SAME made a good connection, particularly when I was a commander in NAVFAC, with the other service engineers. I think it gives you the opportunity to develop that professional network that you use in your job. Because the way you get things done is calling people you know. When you retire, if you've been in the military all your life, like I was, you don't really know what is there on the outside. What can I do? So it was very advantageous to me to be able to talk to people and say, what do you do and what kind of things could I do? It's an opportunity also to continue to exercise and learn as a leader. You can have positions in the annual training conferences, all those sorts of things, which are great opportunities to build that network, but also to develop yourself as a leader. If somebody would ask me in 1965, when I graduated from college, would I be where I am today in terms of the experiences I've had, I would have said never. Whatever happens, happens for the best. So deal with it and move on. And while you're dealing with it, look for help that you can get from organizations like SAME and the people that are in SAME. And you'll be just fine.